Wake to rise to new heights, family. Wake to rise to new heights every single day. Today is called We Are the Ravaged, We Are the Truth Seekers. And I want to share a little bit of information. Some thoughts have been swirling in my head the last few days. Hopefully a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of motivation to you on this day, and whenever you choose to listen back to this message. First off, I want to give thanks to everybody who supports my efforts and my journey. And I hope that something I do or say or share is supportive to you and your journey and the path that you are on. Today, we're talking about what it means to be the ravaged. It's a phrase I've come up with just in the last couple days, just thinking about all of us and the path that we're on, the path that we're walking, and the journey that we're on. So let's take just a quick moment. Ravage, to work havoc upon, damage, or mar by ravages. To do ruinous damage, devastating or destructive action. So if someone considers themselves the ravaged, you could say they are somebody who has been damaged, devastated by destructive action. They have been a face ravaged by grief, a body ravaged by life. And just in the interest of knowing the opposite, the antonym for ravage, recondition, recover, redeem, rehabilitate, restore, to mend, to revamp, to repair. So I'm calling out to all of those who consider themselves to be the ravaged, those who have been hurt, those who have had their physical body, their spiritual body, their mental capacity ravaged, havoc wreaked upon in some capacity. And yet you found a reason to persist. You found a reason to continue on. And this thought was actually inspired by a book that I'm reading at the moment, which is called Love Warrior. And I'm just going to share a brief moment of it with you guys so you can understand what I'm getting at here. First off, I would recommend the book Love Warrior. I haven't completed it, but from what I've read, it's already very, very powerful. The woman who is writing about her experience with bulimia and with low self-esteem and self-hate and just self-destructive behaviors, with sex and with her bulimia and with alcohol and drugs and really anything that she could, put herself through. And it's something that I very much resonate with. I've told my story many times, but for those who are unfamiliar, I spent my early years very depressed. By 6 years old, contemplating suicide and spending a lot of my time very aware of that term suicide and what does it mean and what's it like to be a person who dreams of what's it like to not exist. And I can resonate with the words and the experiences that the author of Love Warrior is describing here. Specifically, there's a scene where she, as a young girl, is put into what she describes as a mental institution because of her bulimia and her family's inability to process and to know how to take care of her and what to do. And so she ends up in this hospital with a roommate. Her roommate's name is Mary Margaret, who's an anorexic young girl. So you have a bulimic girl and an anorexic girl living together. And she tells this story. I'm just going to share this one moment right here. She says, quote, "I tell Mary Margaret about my great-grandfather. I explain that he was a coal miner in Pittston, Pennsylvania, and that every morning my great-grandmother packed a lunch pail for him and sent him down into the mines. It was dangerous work because there were deadly invisible toxins in the mines, but the miners' bodies were sensitive enough to register the poison. So they weren't sensitive enough to register the poison. So they carried a canary in a cage down into the mines with them sometime. The canary's body was built to be sensitive to toxins, so the canary became their lifeguard. When the toxin levels rose too high, the canary stopped singing, and the silence was the miners' signal to flee the mine. If the miners didn't leave fast enough, the canary would die, and not much later, so would the miners. I tell Mary Margaret that I don't think we're crazy. I think we're the canaries. Could it be, I ask, that we aren't making any of this up, that we are just sensing the very real danger in the air? I tell Mary Margaret that I think the world is more than a little poisonous and that she and I were built to notice it. I tell her that in lots of places, canaries are appreciated. They're the shamans and the poets and the sages. But not here, I say. I say, we are the ones on the bow of the Titanic pointing and yelling, iceberg, but everyone else just wants to keep dancing. They don't want to stop. They don't want to know how broken the world is. So they just decide, we're broken. And when we stop singing, instead of searching the air, they put us away. This place is where they keep the canaries. So I think that is so insightful and so powerful. I can't tell you guys how many times I've traveled this world and met people who are the canaries, or what I'm calling the ravaged. Many of you know that I did 2 U.S. speaking tours. I traveled around the United States in 2017. The summer of 2017, I visited 45 cities. And the summer of 2018, I visited 52 cities. In those years, I've spoken Mexico in several locations. I've spoken Costa Rica. I've spoken Portugal. I've spoken in Spain. In every single place that I've spoken, someone has come up to me and they've expressed 2 things. I feel alone. My family won't listen to me. My partner won't listen to me. My wife, my husband, my kids. People feel alone. They feel isolated. They feel crazy, especially in this line of research that many of us are in. They feel very much like they are wrong. And then I also have noticed that a lot of us, like myself, have turned to drugs or alcohol or sex or gambling or spiritual bypassing or some form of externality that allows us to avoid the problems that are going on in our world. And now I know that a lot of my trauma and a lot of my self-medication came from my lack of relationship with my father. However, I do believe that the reason beyond my pains for my father, and even maybe the reason my father was so pained and he couldn't make it through this world without using drugs and being in such an emotional state, and then eventually succumbing to drug overdose just 2 years ago. I believe that people like him and people like myself, and maybe the author of the Love Warrior memoir, we are the canaries, we are the ravaged, and we are now being reborn. We came into this planet, and some of us recognize that, guys, we're living in a madhouse. Does anybody else see this? But no, we're told by our friends, our family, and the people that we believe are the adults that have it all figured out that this is how life works. You're supposed to go to school. You're supposed to get a job. You're supposed to go to college. You're supposed to get married. You're supposed to get a mortgage, work for the next 40 to 50 years of your life, retire, get a fancy car somewhere on 45, rent an RV when you're older, and then travel a little bit, and then die. And people like myself don't always feel like that's the path for us. There's nothing wrong if that's the path you choose. Of course, this is a beautiful life with each of us able to choose our own paths. My point here is I think that some of us have come into this world as the canaries, as the ravaged. And because the world doesn't make sense, we punish ourselves. We put ourselves through so much crap because we're trying to make sense of this. And I believe, as I've written in some of my books, that we are going through a grieving process. It is the reality that you wake up to understand that the world around you, that the vast majority of the things that you've been taught are lies. And so you have to spend a lot of time unlearning and relearning things. And that is a part of the grieving process. You know, if you understand the grieving process, some people go through stages of anger, they go through stages of denial, and then some people get to acceptance. And it's not that everybody goes through each stage equally or that each stage lasts the same amount of time. My point here is that I do think that the reason, for example, that I used to get arrested in high school, the reason I used to get in trouble in school and is because I realized it was a game. It didn't make any sense to me. I had all these adults around me telling, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And I would raise my hand and say, well, excuse me, I have a question. I'm just curious, how come the things you teach us don't line up with what I'm seeing in the world around me? You know, the narrative that we're sold about, for me here in the United States, that the United States is this great nation that, you know, saved the world and we should worship the military and all these kinds of things. Or even when I was at Sunday school and my parents really tried to push me to religion. And then I would say, excuse me, I've been learning about Greek and Roman mythology in school. How do we know that in 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years, that Christianity won't just be taught as mythology? Or whatever question I had on my mind. And I very quickly realized that they didn't want questions. I was kicked out of Sunday school more times than I can count. I was kicked out of class more times than I can count. And I don't think it was just because I was a quote unquote bad kid or a bad seed. I believe that many of us were sent here to be the canaries, to say, guys, something is fucking wrong. Do you see what's happening around us? And of course, this is becoming more and more obvious to people as we're dealing with everything in our current paradigm. But many of us have felt it since birth and have gone through these situations. And so I just want to send out a heartfelt, like a hand. I'm reaching out to you. If you feel alone right now, you are the ravaged. You are the truth seekers. You are the canary in the coal mine. Your experience does not define you. If you've been addicted to drugs, if you've been addicted to sex, to gambling, if you just maybe have ignored life, maybe you have your own way. I spent a lot of time cutting myself, guys. When I was younger, I cut myself. I cut my wrists. I cut my stomach. I cut my legs. I hated my body. I felt like maybe it's something wrong with me. I can't seem to fit into this world, and maybe I'm the one that's wrong. So it turned into a lot of self-hate. And maybe your experiences are different. But my friends, if you hear my voice right now, you're not alone. You are not alone. I am not always available to pick up the phone and be there for you physically, or just on the other side of the phone, or maybe even just through a text. But I want you to know, when you have those moments, when you feel at your lowest and your weakest, and you think that you need to turn back to the drugs, or you need to turn back to the self-destruction, you need to turn back to that havoc, that you are not alone out here, that there are so many people out here who are on this journey, and we are with you. I can't tell you guys how often this has happened to me, that I've met so many beautiful people on the road who are recovering meth addicts, are recovering drug addicts, are recovering sex addicts, are recovering from gambling, are recovering from a number of different traumas. It all comes from trauma. And again, we can point to different experiences. For me, it was my relationship with my father, but I do think that there is an underlying, inherent feeling that there is something wrong in the world. And many of us are trying to shout it from the rooftops. We're doing it with our social media. We're doing it with our bodies. We're doing it with our handmade signs. We're doing it with our voices. And sometimes we do it in prayer. Sometimes we do it in meditation. But we're out here and we're saying, fucking listen, do you hear us? Do you hear me? Something's wrong. I need you to pay attention. I need you to hear me. We are the canaries. We are the ravaged. But we are also the truth seekers. We are also the reborn. I truly, truly do believe in my heart, despite all the things that I report on, despite all the things that you will see and hear me talk about with our current paradigm, that there is still an opportunity to create a better world. If I didn't believe that, I would not be right here talking with you guys. I'm here because I believe the message of what I call the conscious resistance or holistic activism is still true. I believe that those of you who are hearing my voice are hearing my voice for a reason. I believe that we've connected for a reason. And I believe we still have an opportunity to change things around. But it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of work. And it's probably going to take generations. But if we, the ravaged, the canaries, if we are incapable, if we decide we don't want to do it, if we decide it's too much work, it's too much effort, my friends, I've been there. I feel that way often. Walk outside. Go feel the sunlight on your face. Open your hands up to the sky. Take a deep breath in. Take your shoes off. Put your feet on the earth. Touch the earth. Reconnect to it. And remember that this is why we are here. This is why we came here. I know that the Creator brought me here for a reason. It's taken me a long time to realize that, to have the courage and the empowerment to say, I love myself. I think I'm a pretty good guy. And despite all the mistakes I've made in my life, I think I came here for a reason. And part of that reason is to connect with you guys. It is to share the conscious resistance, to share the realization that the struggle for a more free, ethical, and just and truthful world does not come from only confronting the physical systems of power, but it also comes from us doing the internal work, our shadow work, as some call it, from healing, working on our traumas, learning to find our insecurities, our doubts, and our fears, and loving them, showing them love more than ever. Guys, the world is going to get crazier. The external world is only going to get crazier. And if we can't find our peace within, then we will not make it through this. But the rest of the world needs us. We might feel alone. We might feel isolated, but this is our path. We are the canaries. We are the truth seekers. We are the ravaged. And today I ask you to claim that title proudly and to go out into your day and recognize that you are here for a reason, and that is to change this fucking world. So let's do this together, guys. I love each and every one of you very much. I appreciate you who take the time to listen to my words, to listen to my rants and to the reports I bring to you guys. I want you to know that it truly does come from my heart, and I know that we can do this together. So please have a beautiful day, and remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends. Peace.